What is up, your Rainbow Royalty? I'm Miss Explains and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about some common misconceptions about asexuality. So let's just jump right in. So the first and most common misconception about asexuals is that they don't experience attraction at all, and that could not be further from the truth. Asexuality means that you don't actually have any sexual attraction. That does not mean you don't have a romantic attraction. Of course, there are aro-ace people who don't experience romantic attraction, but asexuals can, and oftentimes a lot of them do, actually experience romantic attraction. Another misconception is that asexuals don't like sex. And this, again, can be kind of hard to think about, but there are different kind of spectrums for asexuals. So there's like sex positive, sex neutral, and sex negative, which I did do in a different video if you want to watch that. But basically, this means that asexuals don't just absolutely hate sex or the idea of it. So there are different levels of people, and so some of them can actually experience like some sexual desires or like have a libido or have like arousal or stuff like that, but that doesn't always have to be the case. And a lot of times people think that asexuals don't experience any of those, and that's not true. Asexuals can experience that, and they can even like it, but they just don't have sexual attraction, which is different from having the arousal or the desire. Another misconception people have is it's the same thing as like abstinence or celibacy, which those are choices. Those are people choosing not to engage in sex, whereas with asexuality, that's where you don't experience any attraction, and it is your sexual orientation that is just determined just as who you are. It is not a choice, it's just who the person is. I apologize if you can hear like a roaring in the background. I just turned on a fan because it's really hot in my room. But the next one is that asexuals don't experience any like discrimination, and that is not true. Asexuals, a lot of times people tell us that our identity is not valid, that it doesn't exist, that we haven't met the right person yet, things like that. But also asexuals are at high risk of sexual harassment, as they most of the times don't want to engage in sex. Of course, some asexuals do, but they generally have a higher risk of sexual harassment because of their orientation and people trying to force them to change, or people trying to fix their sexual orientation. Another misconception is that asexuals have some sort of mental illness or physical disability, and most of the times that is not the case. Most of the times asexuals, that is their sexual orientation. It has nothing to do with their physical ability or their mental ability. They don't have any sort of mental problem that is making them not want to have sex for a lot of asexuals. That is just their sexual orientation. Another thing I hear a lot is that it's a phase, and this is not true. It is somebody's sexual orientation, that's how they identify. And just because somebody is young and says they're asexual doesn't mean that it's just a phase that they're going to grow out of. I am asexual, and I have identified myself as asexual for a long time now, ever since I knew what the word was. That's how I've identified, and I believe it is going to stay that way for the rest of my life. And that is totally okay, and it's not a phase. Another thing is, you don't know unless you've actually had sex. And this could not be further from the truth. How do you know you're not gay if you haven't had sex with a man and you're a man? You just know. You just know what you are and aren't attracted to. Asexuals know that they don't have sexual attraction, so they identify themselves as asexual. Another misconception is that asexuals have had some sort of trauma in the past. And while this may be true for some asexuals, this is not always the case. Asexuals just have no sexual attraction, and that is how they identify and how they feel, and that is perfectly okay. I kind of touched on this before, but another one is that asexuals never have sex, and that, again, is not true. Just because somebody doesn't experience sexual attraction doesn't mean that they don't necessarily have the desire or the arousal, or just do it for their partner, or to have children, or anything like that. There's a lot of different reasons why an asexual person would have sex, and they could be sex positive. Not all asexuals are sex negative, which means that they don't like it, or the idea of it, or anything about it, but that's not always the case for all asexuals. And on the flip side of that, saying that you can't be asexual if you've had sex, or you have it somewhat regularly, that is not the case. Asexuals, again, it's their sexual attraction. There's a difference between that and their desire and things along those lines. And again, sex positive or sex negative. I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but this is just who the person is and that they don't feel sexual attraction. And there are tons of different ways that an asexual person can be, whether that's sex positive, sex neutral, sex negative, or if somebody is like gray asexual, just asexual. There's so many different ways that an asexual person can like particularly identify. And then there's the part with like the sexual attraction versus desire versus arousal. So there's just a ton of different varieties that somebody can be for being asexual. So just remember that, again, having sex or not having it doesn't necessarily make somebody asexual. It is that sexual attraction that is like the main component of asexuality. Another one is that asexuals, this kind of touches on like physical ability sort of stuff, but basically another one is that asexuals have some sort of hormone imbalance. And that is not true. Asexuals, their libido may be high or low, but that's completely different from having sexual attraction to other people. So no, asexuals do not have hormone problems. And finally, the last one is that asexuals don't want to have children. And while that may be true for some asexuals, such as me, a lot of asexuals actually do want to have children, whether that's adopting or even biological. So that's kind of one of the reasons why an asexual person may actually have sex, is because they want to have their own child, and that is perfectly okay and does not invalidate them from being asexual. I hope you learned something in this video, and thank you for watching. If you have any video suggestions, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys in the next one.